Welcome, or should I say marhaba, salam alaikum, Marriam Mossalli. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm so happy to finally get this Zoom going.
I know. It's a little bit of a catch up for us as well. So, a little bit of a dynamic, but you are actually the first female voice that I'm going to have in conversation with. Yeah, I know. Saudi represent.
We're always leading the way with women empowerment stuff.
I know, but you yourself are one of the leading voices to come out of the region, Saudi Arabia and the GCC as a whole.
I definitely have a loud voice.
Yeah.
I'm glad I did for some good.
But absolutely. But you are the founder of NicheArabia, which is the leading luxury management and communications consultancy, again, in Saudi Arabia, the GCC, in the Arab world, and also the author of the incredible Under The Abaya, which was when it was launched. I'm trying to remember what year that was. Forgive me.
Yeah, our first edition was February 2018, and then the second one is actually coming out on June 24th, the anniversary of that, historic decision where we lifted the ban on women driving in Saudi. So we're celebrating that by the second edition.
Absolutely. It was so brilliant. And I mean, the past, I guess, 5 years for Saudi in particular, and, the implementation of new rulers and crown princes and so forth has really shown Saudi in such a different light, a little bit more dynamic. You guys are one of the fastest growing, countries in this region.
Well, I always joke and say that, we're changing at millennial speed. So it's good. It goes with our population. We have 70% under the age of 30. So they're not used to waiting on things. So they're happening fast. And I think, it is kind of a game of catch up for Saudi Arabia. But I think that this is the time where you're really seeing the dynamic shift of, and I'm talking about local, citizens really feeling that pride and that confidence, of owning Saudi. I think, a lot of times we've been judged by the West, and it's always been this kind of knee-jerk reaction to whatever the West is asking us or, saying about us. And I think this is the first time where it's kind of we don't care, we're really confident with what's happening, and we're seeing the changes on the ground. And we're applying all of these, progressive thinking. And I think that's what's super exciting about the time right now in Saudi.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm sure a lot of people, in particular friends maybe from the Western world that are watching this, that are like, hang on, she's not covered. What's going on here? Because
I remember
that representation, that, I guess Western narrative that all women in the region are covered, but no, there is, the ability for you guys to make your own choices now.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, and one of the things too that's super interesting is that people assume that, just because you're conservative, you can't be progressive. And I think that those things are not mutually exclusive. I think, seeing a girl, looking like this versus someone like this, it doesn't mean that I'm the more, progressive person and she's the more, conservative. Okay, yes, conservative in how she dresses, but not in her thinking. I mean, I can tell you, I have a lot of conservative views. I mean, one of them, is, now with the influencers on social media and them showing themselves. I mean, I think, I don't know, I must be getting old because I was like, oh my God, to each their own. Again, I'm not judging them, but it's just very strange for me to kind of make that connection of she's representing Saudi Arabia and yet, she's showing her midriff or she's showing cleavage. These are things that I'm not saying we don't do it. Yeah. I mean, we all travel, we all know this.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what's happening. They haven't traveled for summer, so now let's get out on social media. But it's just interesting to see this kind of shift, having, these, it being and accepted in a way. I mean, from what I see, I don't know if they're deleting comments or what, but from the majority, I mean, we're accepting this new normal of Saudi. And I think that's super interesting. I would argue that, you still can be respectful for, the region and still understand, it's like going to the Vatican, that kind of, example that people say, when you go to the Vatican, you dress modestly out of respect. I feel the same way about my country. We are, the custodians of the two holy mosques in a way. We have Mecca and Medina. And so you feel that that type of respect in that way. I'm not saying these girls are disrespecting our country. I'm just saying it's interesting to see that now that is representative of Saudi, where, you know, like you just said, within a few years ago, that wasn't happening. You know,
absolutely not.
I was talking to one of my old bosses, actually. I was editor for this magazine almost 15 years ago. It was one of my first editorial jobs. And we were talking about how we did this cover, and the girl was actually one of my friends, and we put her on the cover, and it was done. It's an art and graphic magazine. And so she's really pixelated. Like, you can barely tell it's her.
Okay.
Was when you flipped it over inside the cover, we actually wrote her name. So we said model, you know, and we put her name. And her dad flipped out. People flipped out. They couldn't believe we put the girl's name, on the mag. And I mean, to see that shift to what we're doing now, where we have, you know, again, you know, on social media, but, you know, forget that, you have in major, you know, Saudi women not only, you know, showing themselves, but owning up to their name. I mean, I can tell you more stories. I called my dad's office and I said, hi, you know, this is Marriam. Can I speak to Najib? And the secretary was like, oh my God. And it was the gossip for the town that I said my name, that I didn't say, Najib, you know, like, it was like, yeah, because you didn't divulge that information. The woman was this princess, quote unquote, that you kind of hid. And, you know, she was something that was secret and you didn't expose to the public.
Yeah.
I think women's, you know, Rima bint Bender, Johra bint Talal, all of these princesses that, you know, that are going out and showing themselves, and, you know, owning their name. I think that's really inspired this next generation. And I mean, it's not even with the book. Yeah, everyone wants their name, but in it as well, you know. So it's really interesting to see that shift, and in such a short time, you know, time frame.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, the UAE and Saudi in particular for the region, obviously they're, you know, different countries, different rules and regulations, but most certainly for this region. And something that I wanted to ask you was that, you know, in terms of being a consultancy for luxury brands throughout the region, which I guess the region has been up to date known for massive consumers of luxury items. And where does that tie into, I guess, the tradition of the Arab world, which is steeped in, you know, I guess, minimalism almost to a point. And then there was this shift into, I guess, consumerism of those luxury brands. And
well, I think that, you know, I think first of all, it's crazy to see how the region has shifted over the few years. And again, it has a lot to do with our, you know, our demographics. We're younger. You're not having, walk in and say, I want this one, you know, out the, you know, I'll take the rest. It's not that kind of thing where she's just going in and blindly spending, as we used to have back in the day when we had the oil boom in the 70s. And then you had the 90s, where it was just like, you know, Saudi was synonymous even with this kind of, you know, overspending and indulgence. Now we have this young generation that's like, hey, you know what, I'm going to inherit everything anyway. So let me spend on smaller fine jewelry. And they're buying, you know, this access, I call it access luxury. You know, the t-shirts, the sneakers, the trendy stuff that you're seeing, you know, pushed on your feed every day. But I think that, you know, Saudi, we've always been into the finer things, you know, whether it was, you know, certain spices and stuff. I mean, you have to remember, we're part of the Silk Road. So, you know, we're used to being merchant, especially from, you know, the East Coast, Jeddah, where I'm from. So this is kind of innate in this kind of barter system of always wanting these, imported goods. I think that's still true to this day. What I'm happy to, though, you know, report from my personal experience is that what I'm seeing is that this generation is also very proud of their local crafts and talent.
Absolutely.
And, you know, that I think has just changed also within the last 10 years, I would say within the last decade. You know, before as a designer, you'd had to go abroad to be validated abroad and then come back in. And then it was like, oh yes, you know, he dressed Princess Diana, or, you know, the Vogue talked about them or something. Now I feel that, you know, we've come where we're kind of like the Japanese in the 90s, where it was this whole shift of the youth going into these rural areas to kind of get back, you know, into their roots. And I see that with Saudi. You know, like I mean, even what I'm wearing right now is a young Saudi, you know, creative that did this. I mean, also, I mean, from the looks of it, you can tell also 10 years ago. But, you know, like, you know, so you want to support your local talents. And I think even now with COVID, that's even more important. And we're going to see, I think, more of that. I know me personally, the first Ramadan where I actively went and said, okay, I'm putting money on, you know, with these regional designers.
Yeah.
For that, I would never do that. And I mean, I hate to say that, but it's more because I feel like, oh, Ramadan, like I'm going to wear it for 1 month. You know, I'm one of these people, I like to invest in what I purchase. So, you know, just like a kaftan that I can wear in Ramadan, but then also wear on the beach.
Yeah.
So not that traditional kind of kaftan for Ramadan. And this year I was like, no, I'm doing it. I'm doing that to support and also, you know, fix my closet, I guess. Make it pretty.
Of course. Why not? Why not? You know, two birds, one stone. But
exactly.
also, you know, in your Instagram, you know, the things that you've posted that, you know, you've got a lot of tongue in cheek and a lot of, you know, talking about that consumerism and it cracks me up. I mean, I think it's absolutely brilliant, you know, and the way that you go about that. But have you ever copped backlash from things that you've said or?
I've definitely had, I mean, I remember when I did a critique on the Cannes Film Festival, and I was basically saying that I don't understand this whole need to push, you know, your marketing people, you know, call them influencers, call them what you will, to the red carpet on an event that's super known for being an industry event. I mean, that's kind of what gives it its credibility. That's what gives it its prestige. And I just felt that that was kind of out of place and that we keep doing this. I mean, if you want eyes on people, I get it. I mean, I was a journalist. I get, you know, the idea of PR and getting coverage. I don't think that they need to be in the same place as a director and actress. And I got backlash on that because I feel like people thought I was personally attacking the girls. And I feel, you know, but I wasn't. I mean, I was making it, actually, I'm very careful in that. I never attack the influencers themselves. I always attack the brands because that's what I am. I'm a, you know, brand strategist. So I'm talking to the know better. And if you don't, here, I'm willing to teach you. You know, I remember when things happened in Saudi, you know, for example, the first girls to be in the Olympics. And I remember getting on, you know, interviews from journalists saying, is this just a token gesture from your government and blah, blah, blah. You know, kind of analysis and this kind of critique. And also I would say, you know, cynicism around it. Whereas nowadays with social media, you're not allowed to even critique anything. You're not allowed to have that cynicism. If I say, Bella Hadid is, you know, is posting me, but I find that really kind of a marketing ploy, then I'm kind of judged as being a, you know, female hater or like, you know, being jealous. Like there's always another motive rather than me just feeling like, I just thought that was not genuine. And that's just my personal opinion and that's okay. You know, agree. I think, you know, a lot of times now we are really bullied into conforming our thoughts. And I think that right now, great, we're doing it for the reasons of social justice. We're doing it for, you know, things that like anti-racism, and those things are great causes. But what happens when those causes shift? What happens when it's like about our freedom of speech, about censoring ourselves online? I mean, whatever it is. I mean, I can think of 100 things that could go wrong. It could be like a Black Mirror episode. And I just, because we're brainwashing now this generation to just conform and be part of stuff. I was raised that you ask questions, you know, even if these questions are uncomfortable, you know, that kind of thing of there's no stupid question. I mean, I feel like nowadays it's not that there's no stupid question, it's that the question better be, you know, PC, it better be politically correct. Otherwise you're going to be attacked. And I'm like, how do you learn from there? Like, you know, I've, you know, you just said this earlier.
Where's that middle ground, you know, without it shifting?
Well, even, for example, I'm on social media, and one of the things that I know is that, and I always used to tell, you know, anyone that I worked with or any of these influencers that I worked with, or, I mean, even just girls with a social media account that's open, you become a representative of your region. This is something, you know, the Middle East is something that people don't know about. We're not covered enough in, you know, international media. We don't narrate our own stories. I mean, this is what a lot of my initiatives are about. So by being, you become that representative, and you need to be open. You have to answer people's, and how stupid, you know, they may be. Like, you know, like I just said, there's no stupid question. Like, do you ride camels? Do you have this? Like, you know, can you, like, my house, do I look like I'm wearing this? No, this is when I go out only, you know, these questions that you take for granted, but these people don't know, but you're educating them. I mean, and one of my, you know, most proudest things I think about being on social media and why I still put up with it in a way is that I can change one person's opinion, and that, to me, that's enough. And I do get that. I do get people be aggressive, and then I respond in a very respectful manner, but like obviously correcting them. and then they like follow me, and that it's kind of that like verification, or that validation of this, like, boom, like I converted someone, I got someone to,
like,
my opinion.
there's an understanding. I think I have that commonality with you in the sense that obviously I'm a Western female, I'm Australian, obviously aesthetically I'm as Western as they come, but
you're white.
I'm white. But it's interesting that when I speak about the region, I get a different demographic of people listening, because they're like, oh, well, she looks like me and she's safe over there and she wears that and she's fine. So, oh, okay, that puts, a whole nother perspective on the region, which I love being able to do, because, it's not that propaganda that, is infiltrated in the media about what the region is. Instead, it's coming from me. And I guess because I'm not Arab, some people are more willing to listen than if I was. So that comes with a bit of responsibility as well.
No, and I love that. And I think that's absolutely true. I mean, I think that's actually one of the things that I think Saudi, we need to work on, is because, with Saudiization and everything, and we have enough Saudis in Saudi, we're 31 million, and we have like 28 million Saudis. So they're not that really like, let's get foreigners to come and live here and have this expat community. Our expat community is quite small. And I think that personally, I think we should work on, because like you said, once, people see, oh, she's just like me and she's safe, and she, her point of view is, it's a cool place, they're more willing to come,
And even I remember someone asking me, because, I'm Catholic, and I remember someone asking me, oh, do you feel comfortable wearing a cross? And I was like, huh? Like, of course I do. You do realize that Christianity was born from the Middle East. Let's just put that in perspective, so, so it's so funny listening to some people's ideas of what happens in the region.
And I mean, and it's a reality. I mean, I had one of my friends who I went to college with come to Saudi. We're working together now, which is really cool. But when he came, he was like, "Marriam, this is not what I imagined." And I said, "What do you mean? First of all, we've been friends since, for 15 years. I've pictures of Saudi when I was in college, and then beyond that, social media. I mean, he still had this idea that it was going to look like a Sally Field movie about Iran, where the girls like all like running around. That was not my daughter reference there for the young ones. But this mentality, I mean, and it's super interesting. And I remember laughing because I was like, still, you still have this idea. And he's like, well, I mean, look at what's on the news. And I think this is why I'm so vocal, and this is why I do put myself out there. Like I said, I mean, not everyone's going to like you, and I think that's okay. But as long as you're honest and you say what you believe.
Yeah. Do you feel like, obviously, you grew up in like Korea, Malaysia, and then you went to boarding school in Switzerland, and then obviously you went to George Washington University in DC. So you have that gamut understanding of Asia, of Europe, of the US and Saudi. So you're coming with a really broad perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think, being a third culture kid is, it is unique. I think it gives me a kind of, I would say, a footing above people in terms of social media, because my audience is very globalized. So I understand that people come from, various backgrounds. I was saying that during another live where someone was asking me about my background, and I said, I remember so vividly moving to Malaysia from Korea. I must have been about 8 years old, and I was in the car from the airport. My mom telling me, this is a melting pot, and melting pot means it's a bunch of nationalities coming together, and be like, okay, fixating on that word, melting pot. But then, understanding like you had Chinese Malay, you have Indian Malay, you have all these different types of people, and I think having that, being able to have that experience at such a young age, it did kind of set the foundation of understanding that we're not all thinking the same.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that now I was talking with my team was about the difference between cultural appreciation and cultural appropriation.
Oh, and we were massive. Yeah.
Yeah. We were laughing because I was saying, like, as Arabs,
sometimes
like Shaki fabric or the shamak on, like, I don't know, like on Gucci. We're like, yes, Saudi, like we're represented. We get excited. We're not like, oh my God, they stole it from us. Like, what the hell? Like, we needed, a But I think, again, that has to do with the fact that we haven't had, decades of abuse. Whereas, with the Black community, that's something that they feel they've endured. Yeah. And that's why it's frustrating to them to continually have this stolen. Whereas with the Arabs, I think it's still a new thing for us, right? So we're just excited right now. But I think, again, that's what I mean when you have to kind of look at people's backgrounds and people's experiences. It's not just enough to know, that, I'm Marriam from Saudi Arabia and, my mom's from California. You need to know, okay, she was raised here, this, and this is why I have this perspective.
Yeah.
And so I think, it definitely, set a foundation of being a bit more open-minded, but it also, I still make the same mistakes and assumptions as everyone else. I don't think, it's still hard for me to empathize on some things because I don't, I didn't experience it. But again, that's why communication and conversation is so important, because, you need to
have that dialogue. Nothing can be broken down unless you have that communication, that dialogue, have that conversation. And in terms of Saudi Arabia as a whole, where do you see Saudi, or what are your hopes for Saudi in, say, the next 5 to 10 years?
I mean, I definitely see Saudi as a global leader, and I say that for multiple, a bunch of reasons. I was going to say, one, obviously, our GDP, our oil, all of that, where we have funds to kind of make that stance. And I think, now in 2030, we really are focusing internally on ourselves and how to kind of, get the best out of the potential of Saudi. But I think that's what's super exciting, especially as a Saudi as well, being here on the ground. That I really do feel that that's kind of our main objective. Yeah. That being said, asking me what's happening in the next 5 to 10 years, and with COVID, it's kind of hard. I feel like that's the $1 million question.
I know.
Without it, it would have been an easier question to answer. But
in January.
I know. I think that what's happening with COVID now is that the whole world is going to have to pivot. I mean, Saudi, we were focusing a lot on entertainment, and I think that was a big key thing. And I think there's multiple reasons. One, getting our youth to start working. Two, not having them bored, where this is one of the things they were talking about with terrorism, is that it's easy to recruit kids, especially disenfranchised children, because they're bored and they don't feel they belong to a group. So this was, I think there's a lot of reasons behind why we focused a lot on entertainment. It's not just to kind of be like, hey, look how much money we have and we can spend it. There were real crucial things behind it. So I think now that that's shifted, it's going to be interesting to see how Saudi kind of pivots. But that being said, again, the fact that we're mostly a millennial population, I think we're used to being digital. I mean, before when we weren't, when we were segregated, that's how we flirted. It was BBM. It was like Bluetooth. It was like, so like we're just going back to our old ways in a way, But I feel that we have this advantage because we were used to it. So I think, actually this is basically where the world is going to be on a even playing field, and it's going to be really interesting to see what countries really kind of take advantage of. Saudi in the beginning was really smart. The first thing they did when COVID happened is they made us feel safe and they made us feel confident. And I think that's something that the Emirates, we share that, is that our leaders came up. They said, unlike certain other countries around the world where it was kind of like, let's go with the flow and see what happens. Are we wearing a mask? Are we not wearing a mask? Does it live on services? No, it doesn't live on services. Whereas it was Saudi, it was like, whatever it is, whether you're illegal or, Saudi or non-Saudi, you will get healthcare, 100%. We will take care of you. And then it was like, okay, and if your businesses are struggling, we will help compensate that. So there was all these things that rolled out right away.
Incredible.
And I think that helped us kind of feel confident.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly felt that way for me in the UAE, like for sure, because I mean, obviously it comes with having the, I guess, the funds in which to do so. Not necessarily every country has that kind of financial status to be able to roll that kind of game plan out. So in that sense, we've been very, very lucky here in this region and in this particular part of the world that was able to be the case. But yeah, I mean, it's no one was prepared for 2020. No one.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm so upset that I'm not pregnant right now because I'm like, this would have been the
There's
exact
still
time.
time. There's still time.
Yeah, right. No, you know what's gonna happen is I'm gonna get pregnant the moment they're like, yeah, you're good to go to like Ibiza. I'm like gonna be like, great. Like, that's exactly. No, but I mean, I like, I'm just so upset, yeah, that I'm not using this as maternity leave. All my
And
friends
I
are so
mean,
jealous.
yeah, that being said, I won't keep you too much longer. I know you have a very active toddler in the house. I love
Uh,
you so
I'm
much.
definitely for you him. I'm definitely gonna bring him out for you.
Please, please. He is just an absolute gem. So, but thank you so much for letting us in
Oh,
on your perspective and answering the questions that I guess sometimes can be uncomfortable and
no, not at all. And I mean, go feel free to edit and splice. I know I'm quite verbose and when I communicate, so
fine. That's
feel
what we
free.
love you for. That's what we
Time
love.
lapse, and then it like blurs, and there's another word. Oh,
But again,
but
so
let me
much.
show you. Let me get you sued. Hold on.
Please.